I am thrilled to be on this stage with Vitor Olivier, CTO of Nubank. And if you haven't heard of Nubank before, it is a stunning success in digital banking. Maybe Vitor, if you could just tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah, of course, of course. So first of all, thank you so much for having me here. Telling you a little bit of the Nubank story. So Nubank, we were founded about 11 years ago in Brazil as a financial services brought to the digital age. We started with a credit card, no fees, low interest rate, and then kind of grew from that to kind of like a full financial services offer. Today we have over 100 million customers across 3 geographies in Brazil, Mexico, and Colombia. And yeah, it's been a fun journey.
That is an amazing journey. And maybe the one thing that I read when I was doing a little bit of cyber stalking on you is your NPS score really 90?
So yeah, it's very high, and and it's ultimately what we believe is that our most important competitive differentiation is how much we focus on the customer. And we want customers to love us and have the culture that creates those products. So that's how we keep that at that level.
I mean, it is like one of those numbers and metrics that people who are in the biz, you're just like, that's impossible. That's not possible. But I love the idea of how closely that's tied to the customer experience itself. So you started the trajectory from a credit card disruptor to a comprehensive financial services platform.
Yep.
There has to be many twists and turns along the
Absolutely.
way. Maybe can you talk about some like either critical decisions or twists and turns where are major inflection points for the journey of Nubank?
Yeah, so I'll kind of walk you through a bit of like the main chapters of Nubank, right? I think the early days was, what is the regulatory framework? How can we even play this game, right? And understanding how to plug into the central bank, all the accounting regulatory requirements, and how to simplify that to the customer. So that, a lot of work was just simplifying the complexity that already exists just in financial services. Then, with the first product being the credit card, then we moved to, great, we're giving people credit. I need to trust the customer. That's a great way to get started, right? Because if I get that wrong, the pain, the cost resides with the issuer, not with the customer. But then at some point, we earn that trust, and financial services is really a business of trust. And then we move towards having the right to go to kind of their savings and to the deposits and to more the transactional day-to-day account. And that's really a big shift into how do you go from something that's just kind of transactional, credit-based, to something that you can have the deep trust of the customer to have a more complete relationship. So there's a lot of product innovation that comes from that. And then it resonated with people, and then it's been a big, big journey on scaling the product. So a lot of challenges on just to get the right scalability, to get the right experience in a holistic way. A lot of work on just operational efficiency. Cost matters a lot. If you want to bank the unbanked in Latin America, if you want to be able to really bring people, 100 million people onto the formal economy, you need to have a very low cost base. So there's a lot of work in that regard. And so it's been a series and series of kind of steps, as you see in 11 years, of how we changed the main focus of the company. But what I would say is the one story that I like to tell that I think it really exemplifies Nubank and the fact that we believe that culture is what the customers consume is 3 years into the company, we were monitoring our credit portfolio. And we're seeing increase in interest revenue. And it was not expected. And we looked into it, and we saw that there was these customers that were usually paying on time, they were going late for a couple of days and then paying full. And we were like, well, that's very strange. They're going late for a couple of days, they're paying full, credit risk is not increasing, interest is going up. What's going on? And then we realized that that was happening because one product feature that we had was accidentally turned off. There's a little bug, and we stopped reminding customers to pay on time. And then in most, I mean, I'm not going to say what most financial services would do, but you see, if you see a situation in which you have revenues going up, no complaints, costs kind of stable, you say, oh, what a great business opportunity, right? Now let's find other emails to turn off. that's precisely the opposite of what we did. Like, it was very obvious for us that, like, no, our job is to have a customer focus. Our job is to earn people's trust. And so it was unanimous. Everyone turn the email back on, remind customers. But not just that. That led to us creating a policy that for people who are good payers historically, if they get sloppy, one bill randomly, we will refund it structurally. So it's kind of like that willingness to not have some types of revenue that are not fully aligned with the customer. So I think those types of things really resonate. We could list 100 of those, but that's really the culture, the product mindset that we have.
I love that foundation of how the culture permeates so that you don't actually have to have that critical strategic discussion. It just seems like a natural decision in that process. Now, one question I have for you is, in my cyber stalking, is that same journey, you've personally gone through an incredible amount of different roles in your journey. You were the CHRO and the CTO?
Yes.
That is incredible. And I feel like this is a lot of what we're seeing in the market of like being more customer-centric, being more of the people is actually a real foundation to a lot of leadership.
Yes. So I'll walk you briefly through my career. I won't bore you with it, but basically I started in software engineering, had some product roles, some operation roles, general management roles, and then at some point, like 9 years into Nubank, I took the CHRO role, and people ask me like, why did you do that? What brought you to this? And I think as you build the company, I joined when there was just 5 of us in a little house. When you start a company, you really realize that more than anything, a company is the people and the culture and the incentive structures around it. Everything else, the tech, the product, all the things that are more feel like tangible aspects of the company, they erode and disappear if the people aren't there, the culture aren't there, and the incentive structures aren't there. So it was something that was very dear to me and close to me, and something that was very involved throughout the building of the company, all things related to org structure, performance management, compensation philosophy, things along those lines. And I think at some point, our founder and CEO, David, came to me, he's like, well, you keep having all these opinions about, like, do you want to be actually accountable for doing it? And it turns out it's much harder to do it when you're there versus like having opinions on the sidelines. But I think it was a super enlightening kind of journey and a great experience. And I think it's something that adds many more tools to my toolkit as an executive.
100%. That's amazing. All right, so speaking of people, culture, ways of working, when you hit 100 million users and thousands of employees, that is incredible. But how do you actually keep that, from 5-person employee base where you're nimble to all the way scaling to that experience? What is your tricks of the trade, tools, processes that you've built for Nubank so that you can keep that agility going?
It's a great question. So 100 million customers dealing with money in a regulated industry, right? Like, you think about that, you don't really, like agility and risk-taking is not the first words that come to mind, but we think that protecting that culture is something that's very important. And it's the only companies that are going to succeed through all the platform shifts that we're going to see are the ones that are most adaptable, right? Anti-fragile. And so what we really think about is that it's not a dichotomy between speed and stability, or speed and quality. Actually, it's through safety guardrails, it's through the confidence that you can ship things, that it won't break anything, that you reach speed, right? It's by investing in quality and getting rid of all kinds of friction points that you get speed. So that's a lot of our mindset. So things that we do, it's there's a strong culture of experimentation. There's a strong culture of canary deployment, feature flagging, really creating the guardrails so that that you can confidently get to production. And if something happens in production, that it kind of self-heal. Yeah. And that's baked into also the product. So as if something is unstable or so there's any issue, can it fail gracefully? And can we design those things gracefully? So there's a lot of process that goes into making sure that we're creating the right environment. And for reference, we kind of have one deployment to production every 2 minutes. Even at our scale, that is kind of the speed that we're seeing changes happening. So it's really powerful. But that's the process piece. And I think the other piece that's very important in all of this is kind of the cultural piece. And it's the same thing. You're more confident if you feel like your failure won't be an issue. So we have, you know, constant retrospectives. When there's a big issue, we have blameless postmortem. And these are things that, for example, we use Mural actively on how to run those dynamics, making sure that we're getting all the thoughts out there. So it's been really powerful. But we even have, for example, things like our mega demo. It's an event that we have every month that half of it goes to great achievements and the other half goes into great crashes or mistakes that we made, and we celebrate the two equally. So it's really a combo of the process piece, but also the cultural piece that make it possible.
That's amazing. Is there an example of an experiment that showed you that level of culture where you guys ran an experiment and got that buy-in as the culture was building?
Yeah, so I think that experiments, I think there are two types of experiments that led to kind of signify some specific important aspects of experimentation. So one is, can we use experimentation to solve and address big problems that seem hard to do without actually getting to production? So one big problem that we had at some point as we were building the savings product is people will have different mental models on how to invest and save money. And if you ask people, like, what is their process? How do they think about saving money? They will actually articulate things that are very different. And it was very fascinating to me because I thought, like, everyone probably have a similar mental model, no, very different mental models of how they split it, or how did they think about the terms, and so on and so forth. And so as we went to that design piece, we said, like, wait, either, like, are we going to be abstracting away for some people, but the other people won't resonate? What do we do? And we said, like, you know what, let's do the stupidest thing we can do. And just create, you have all your balance, and then separate the balance and just hide it. And that's it, and see what happens. And it was just like removing a lot of the scope of different types of assets, types of investments, different goals and names and pictures. And so let's just do it, just separate the money. And doing that, it was incredibly successful. And at that point in time, 30% of all deposits that we had were just hidden away. And it was just like how when you get to the customer, sometimes it really allows you to, in a simplified way, it allows you to get there.
I love it.
And then the other piece is just the other thing that we see, or a good example of experimentation, is also about understanding that every technical decision and product decision is a business decision. So time and time again, we'd see like, this is just a small migration of this new tech. I'm not going to run an experiment and see all the impacts. And the most recent one, it's huge. It's like, I'm just changing the caching strategy in my app. I'm not going to run an experiment. It's okay. It's like, no, please, we need to run it. And what we saw was, yes, improvements in the performance, but the downstream impacts on the conversion of products and revenue is like astounding. And just that really helps one connects the work, the invisible technical work to business results. And being able to articulate the investment in quality means investment in the business. So it's, again, it's not a dichotomy. It's when the two things go hand in hand.
I love it, and it's just at first that caching story, been there.
Yeah,
it's pretty painful. So just to wrap things up, one last question. I think everyone here wants to be customer centric, right?
Yes.
We absolutely have a passion for it. Easier said than done, though, especially as you're scaling. What maybe one practice do you have to place the customer at the center of the process, or any advice for everyone here? So
things that we do that I think really work. So we do have a big customer service operation, and just we run, and the management team, C-level, we will answer tickets from customers on a frequent basis. Like I do it kind of one afternoon every month. And that direct connection with the customer really drives a lot of things home. So getting to touch with customers when they need it, in the middle of their work and whatever they're going through, amazing, right? The other one is just creating feedback loops. How are you sensing, how are you sensing the customer behavior? What do they believe? What are the pain points? What are the friction points? And with the information that you get, and with the direct experience, that creates intuition of what customers really care about. So all these things are good pieces on understanding the customer, but ultimately, I think it's about leadership, and I think it's about the right mindset, and it comes from the top. Being customer-centric, and when there's no trade-off, it's trivial, it's easy, right? And I think leadership is about doing the right thing, even when the immediate incentives, kind of go against it. right? Are you so customer-centric that you're willing to forego of some type of revenue, and not all type of revenue. Revenue can be very constructive for everyone, but some type of revenue that's not, that's sometimes based on asymmetry of information or at the cost of the experience, right? So that connection, I think is super important. And the mindset of we're a company that works very hard to charge less. And these are the types of conversations that we have. So it really needs to come from leaders across the organization. Easier if it's at the top level, but I think everyone can play a leadership role, and we have a bit of that culture.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much, Vitor. That was amazing to hear about your journey,
Thank you very much.
your experience, and thank you, everyone.
Thanks so much.